Carl Higdon, the man who traveled to another planet with an extraterrestrial alien called Auso One. On October 25, 1974, Carl Higdon, a 41-year-old oil industry worker, went hunting during a weekend in the Medicine Bow National Forest in Carbon County, Wyoming. And while hunting a deer, he came across an alien named Auso One who drugged him before taking him to his planet, he claims. So it was an alien abduction. While hunting a deer, a man from Wyoming met an alien who had come to Earth also to hunt deer. That's very strange. The alien administered something to Hunter and then took him onto his planet. On October 25th, 1974, 41-year-old Carl Higdon, who worked in the oil industry, went hunting for the weekend, Medicine Bow National Forest in Wyoming. In the book Alien Abduction of the Wyoming Hunter, first-person story of Carl Higdon, Higdon's wife Marjorie wrote that he was an experienced hunter, but he had not yet been to such a forest. It turned out to be a remote and uninhabited area with no signs of human presence. Higdon visited the forest by car, but the road was not very good, so he walked over a small forested hill. When he was on the other side of the hill, he immediately came across a herd of deer, one of which was a large male with branched antlers. Higdon was about to shoot the deer when something very strange happened. He aimed, fired, but suddenly the shot was completely silent and the rifle did not recoil. And then Higdon watched in amazement as the bullet from the rifle flew ahead in very slow motion. Higdon was about to shoot the deer when something very strange happened. He aimed, fired, suddenly the shot was completely silent and the bullet flew in slow motion. At such a slow pace, the bullet flew only a few meters and then fell sharply to the ground as if it had hit something invisible. And when the hunter looked at this and wondered, he noticed that the whole atmosphere around him became tense, as if filled with static electricity. Higdon went to the bullet to pick it up and saw that it was flattened, as if it had hit something very strong, like an invisible Star Trek type force field. My question? Now the deer had already fled by that time, but Higdon was not alone there. He heard a noise of branches crushing, and when he looked to the right in the shade of the trees, he saw a human figure. The figure was the size of a tall man and wore a tight black jumpsuit, similar to a diving suit. He wore a pair of steel belts and a metal belt with a yellow star decoration at his waist. Despite being human, the creature's head was not at all human. He had no ears. His eyes were small and deep set. In his mouth was an open slit from which 3 large teeth were visible. And 2 short antennae grew from his forehead. The hair on the creature's head was like straw and stood straight up. The creature did not seem to have a neck at all, an eerie head that sat directly on his shoulders, merging with the body. The arms were very long, while one arm had something like a chisel instead of a wrist at the end, and the other had no wrist at all. This strange entity looked at Higdon for a few moments and then took a few steps towards him and asked him in English, "How are you?" The stunned Higdon answered, "Okay," after a couple of seconds. The creature nodded at that and came even closer. It did not look threatened, and then asked Higdon if he was hungry. Without waiting for the hunter's response, the creature pulled out a plastic bag from somewhere and sent it through the air as if using telekinetic towards the hunter. He caught the package, opened it somehow, and found 4 pills inside. The creature said the pills would keep him full for the day. The hunter pulled one out and swallowed and put the rest in his pocket. Then the creature finally introduced himself, said his name was Auso One, and then pointed to something behind him. Higdon saw a transparent cube-shaped object that looked like a large box-shaped spaceship. He saw no entrance, no windows, no landing gear. The spaceship just stood on the ground. Auso asked Higdon if he wanted to take a ride, and before the hunter could answer, he somehow ended up inside the spaceship as if he was teleported there. He did not understand how he fit into that tiny space, but he was immediately seized by panic when he saw that his arms and legs were tied with some kind of ribbons. Then he calmed down a little a kind of force field in which 5 deer were floating. They were frozen, and he was sure that they were the same deers that he had seen in the clearing. Then he saw another creature from the Ausso race in the spaceship. This creature approached the hunter and put a helmet on his head. Then the ship took off, and Higdon could see through the transparent walls how they went up, and there was his car at the bottom of the hill. Then they flew even higher, and he reached the Earth's orbit. Then they flew into deep space around 163,000 light years away from Earth. They ended up on a new planet where the ship approached a huge tower. Around the tower, many colored lights were revolving like powerful searchlights. They were so bright that Higdon could not open his eyes. What happened next, Higdon hardly remembers. At some point, he saw a group of people outside, but he did not understand why they were there and who they were. And then Ausso told him that his race regularly flies to Earth for hunting. Then the hunter also was placed in a room where he was scanned by some kind of a device. Ausso said that the hunter was not suitable for their purpose, and they would bring him back home. They were on Earth as quickly as they flew away from it. Before releasing Higdon, Ausso took a package with pills from him, and then wanted to take his gun, but said that he was forbidden to do so. After that, the aliens disappeared, and Higdon found himself in the forest, completely disoriented and frightened. He wandered around until he somehow found some kind of transport, and in some time he realized that it was his car. With the help of the radio, he gave a distress signal and then sat in the car and shivered, waiting for help. When the search party reached him, it turned out that his car was parked at the bottom of a deep forest canyon 5 miles from where he had left it. There were no roads nearby, and there were no tire tracks in the gorge, so this fact was already a good proof of Higdon's words. Higdon did not immediately recognize his wife from the stress he had endured. Later, it turned out that in that area, on the eve of the abduction of the hunter, other people saw strange lights in the sky. When Higdon was found, he was so confused that he had little to say. He only kept repeating about the bullet which flattened out when struck against something invisible. Most of his memories were obtained through regressive hypnosis. Then a medical examination of the hunter was carried out, and it turned out that the scars left from his long-term tuberculosis disappeared from his lungs, and stones from which he had suffered for a long time disappeared from his kidneys. A flattened bullet was found in the pocket of his jacket, and research showed that it could only get such damage if it hit a very hard surface, harder than wood or stone in the forest. Later, Higdon was repeatedly called a fraud who supposedly invented all this to become famous, but at least the strange fact of finding his car in a place where it could not be in any way according to laws of physics showed that this story is real. And this is from Collective Spark, a History Mystery by Vicky Verma, House and Wise. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.